Yo, what's good, YouTube? It's boardzy, and so far 2024 seems to be a pretty big year for mousepads. This is going to be a review of the Lethal Gaming Gear Neptune, their first new surface in a few years, and a pretty interesting pad because it features a new Japanese rubber foam base, which in my opinion it just performs very similarly to SR foam, which is found in like the GSR-SE, the VAX EPA pads like that. I don't know if it's identical, but that's the type of base that this has. But yeah, pretty much the Neptune is a speed pad. Rather, it is a smooth speed pad, but it's by no means a Raiden clone. It's not identical to the Infinity Mice speed pad. I would say probably the pad that this is closest to would be the Kurosan Ninja, but it's not identical, and obviously this isn't a printed surface, so it does just play differently. So yeah, if you don't have the Kurosan Ninja, the surface is a bit hard to describe. It just feels like a very smoothed out hybrid pad. They describe it as micro textured because it's not just like completely silky smooth, but it's also not textured or abrasive whatsoever like something like a Hied. So this is just a very unique pad in my opinion. But yeah, it's just not an uncontrollably fast experience, really, regardless of the skates. I use this mostly with the NP01 and the GPX, but also plenty of lighter mice. And I'll say that it feels like there is definitely a bit of noticeable static friction, at least compared to the dynamic friction. Like, there's just some type of imbalance where it takes a little bit more to get the mouse going than it does, like, when the mouse is already in motion. And this will vary, like, person to person based on the amount of pressure you're putting on, what type of mouse skates you have. I have found that four-corner skate designs are just much faster on this pad and just play much like smoother, quicker compared to something like Vaxi with their stock skates, which just makes this feel like a speedier experience with a heavy mouse. But yeah, this definitely is a pad that plays quickly, but maybe due to the texture, maybe just due to the surface and base combination, there is a lot of control. The static friction does seem really not a touch high if you're using like a well-balanced low-weight mouse, but as the weight increases, it feels like there's just like some noticeable static friction. So is that the end of the world? Obviously not, but for a speed pad, I would just say that this plays a touch more controlled than I was thinking based on the website, which says that it's like a smooth speed, very fast pad. But yeah, I definitely understand that because it's the fastest pad in Lethal Gaming Gears lineup. But yeah, the big difference you're going to notice from the Raiden surface or the Infinity Mice speed surface compared to the Neptune is it just doesn't have that smooth, buttery feeling glide, and partially what causes that on the Raiden is just the fact that it doesn't have as much stopping power and much lower initial friction. So I would say this is absolutely still a speed pad, but it's just on the lower end of like intense speed pads. Additionally, if you put in pressure, this pad will seriously slow down, even though the base is not like the softest, the thickest, but whatever the type of foam this is, it reacts well to having pressure put in, assuming you want more control. But yeah, I mean, it's really just a matter of personal preference, but especially on a heavier mouse, let's say if you're applying pressure, putting pressure when you click, you might notice that initial friction tug I mentioned a little bit more compared to something like a sub 45 gram mouse with light clicks. You're probably not going to be noticing too much, but still, if you put in pressure, the surface will drastically slow down. I don't know if drastic is the right word. I have had this pad for over a week. I was not able to notice like any inconsistency, any slowing down in any areas, which actually was something I was a bit concerned about, because the surface is kind of, it's not necessarily waxy, but it just had a surface that I was curious if it would like slow down in a humid environment. It's the winter in New York, so it's obviously not super fucking humid, but just nothing really too massive to report at the moment. The surface does kind of get like scuffed up and dirty. I think you can see like the little white marks. That's not the end of the world. You're buying a mousepad like this for performance, at least that's why I would buy a mousepad like this. The stitching is really good. It is not fucking noticeably raised up whatsoever. It's very soft, very thin. It's elite stitching. I don't know what to say. You can't really feel it whatsoever when you swipe your mouse off of it, but obviously don't swipe your mouse off of your mousepad. I mentioned the base. I don't really have any issues with it. I don't think it's the best base ever. I know they have a Neptune Pro coming out, and I'm very interested for that version, especially in an X-Soft. That will be, in my opinion, just a bit more interesting of a speed pad, similar to something like a Raiden X-Soft. But yeah, it's definitely closest to a, somewhere in between soft and mid, but since it's so thin, there's just not a lot of like cushioning. And yeah, in terms of like staying in place, the base is good. Obviously, I do have a few mice on my pad right now, but yeah, it's not going to be noticeably moving around in game. I'm not going to say that this is like the best mouse pad I've ever used, the best speed pad. It's just a matter of personal preference, whether you want a little light texture that's going to pick up on your mouse skates on this versus something like the Infinity Mice Speed or the Raiden, where it's going to be a bit quicker, but you're not going to have as much control or like any type of noticeable texture on the pad. But yeah, while I was testing the Neptune, I switched between that and my worn in, like honestly worn out Raiden. And I would say that a slower, like worn out used Raiden, that is comparable in terms of speed and just initial dynamic friction to the Neptune. But like a fresh Raiden X Soft just plays so differently that it's honestly hard to describe. But yeah, you can see just when I do a glide test, like it is similar amounts of glide. So yeah, Neptune, it's a solid speed pad for $40. It's in a pretty competitive market. That is for the 500 by 500 size. It's really just a matter of preference whether you go for this or other speed pads, what type of base you prefer. And yeah, I'm not going to say that the Neptune really takes the speed pad market by storm, like just makes everything else irrelevant, but this is a much less saturated market compared to, let's say, like Control, Artisan Zero type pads. So yeah, in conclusion, at the end of the day, I would say this is a good speed pad release. I don't have any like massive issues with it, but it's really just not something that I'm going to personally main. I know that I prefer pads like the Otsu, Hien, like even the new Rokaku, just like a textured speed hybrid pad rather than something a bit more like smoothed out like this, or just something controlled and simple. Yeah, I would say the Neptune is right up there with pads like the Lamzu Energon, Kurosan Ninja, Infinity Mice speed pad as just solid non-artisan speed pad options. So that's really all I gotta say for this video. If you have any other questions about this mouse pad, how it plays, anything like that, be sure to let me know in the comments and I will try to respond to them. But yeah, that's going to be all for my Lethal Gaming Gear Neptune review. So based. Peace.